I feel like a lot of people think that the reason they're inconsistent is because they lack discipline. And while I will agree that discipline is a factor and discipline does matter, I feel like it is not as significant to the equation as some people might think. It's like my entire life I've been a very inconsistent person. And what helped me actually get over that and become more productive wasn't necessarily becoming more disciplined, but it was just trusting the process and building small habits that have made me more productive in general. So, for example, in the past, I tried to learn a language. I was trying to learn Spanish, and the thing about learning a language, or learning anything really, is that going into it, there's going to be lots of things that you're not aware of, like lots of techniques for learning that language, like the best possible ways to do it, like how to even go about the process of doing that. So it's not even in that case necessarily that it was difficult, to put in the effort to learn the language. It was just difficult to learn about learning the language, or it was overwhelming when I started because there was so much I didn't know that I need to know before I had a clear picture of what I was supposed to be doing. Like, I think most people have the discipline to just show up and do that thing every day, but it's like it's another level of discipline to like go through all of that unknown, like all of that mental effort to figure out just the basics, like what the hell am I doing here. And so yeah, about like a year ago, I wanted to learn Spanish, and of course, I started like most people would by just installing Duolingo and watching a couple YouTube videos about like basic Spanish grammar. And I was pretty motivated for like a month. Like I was doing Duolingo and I was seeing like a tiny bit of progress, and I knew a couple of words. And then inevitably, for whatever reason, I guess like I got burnt out, or like I just started to lose like motivation, or I my discipline started to wane, or whatever you want to say, and I stopped learning Spanish completely. Like I just put it in the trash, moved on with my life, went on to a new thing. And what I've noticed is that for whatever reason, when I first start things, anything, I have like this massive boost of motivation. Like I have the energy to just do this thing all day long, every single day. Just really like hammering down on it. And then as time goes on, it's like that meter, that energy just starts to like wane very slowly, or sometimes all at once. But then it's just like it's gone. It feels like there's all of this resistance in the way of me continuing to do that thing. And that's the key there is the resistance, because it's like every difficult thing requires some amount of resistance. Like that feeling when you're trying to get out of bed in the morning and your alarm went off and you have to overcome that feeling and get up anyway because you have to. It's almost like that same feeling of resistance that you feel in that moment. It's like, if I want to go to the gym, part of me wants to go to the gym, part of me is like, on the fence, and that's that resistance. I almost have to like battle myself and be like, no, we're going, like, I'm not going to be lazy and sit in bed, I'm actually going to go do this thing. And so what I found is that the times in life when I'm most consistent are not the times that I push myself the hardest and have the most discipline, aren't the times when I'm the most motivated, because motivation goes away. It's really just the times where I was able to lessen the amount of resistance it took to be consistent with things. So recently, 10 months ago, I started learning Spanish again after I totally dropped it. And my entire like theory going into this, like I had a different mentality or different philosophy. It was based on one of my friends. So this friend, he is an incredibly productive, incredibly consistent person in like a couple of very specific ways. So it's like everything else he totally fails at. It's just these few specific things, these things he cares so much about in the world. And for him, that's like cars. Like anything about cars, he could literally build an engine if he wanted to. Like you could point at any car on the road, any car in the whole world, and he could tell you exactly what it is, like how many cylinders the engine has, like when it was produced, like everything about that car. And that was kind of it, like, and I always wondered, like, was like how does he not lose passion for cars? Like how does he not eventually get burned out and not care as much, and you know not be so committed to that particular thing? And so I started to think about it. I was like, well, if you're actually like just obsessed, like if you consume, like if you put yourself in a state where you're consuming that sort of content all day, like if it's this thing that you're in like a feedback loop of, like I saw on his phone, like he would just scroll on TikTok, it was just car videos all day, Instagram was car videos all day. So I realized, yeah, like there isn't necessarily that same obstacle I dealt with learning Spanish, where there was this massive gap in knowledge I had to overcome to like get anywhere near learning the language. Like I had to learn about language learning, the best resources, like where to start, like different learning practices, different, philosophies when it comes to actually retaining the information, like just so many things that felt so overwhelming going in. And you push through that, like that massive gulf, but that's what's really robbing you of that energy. That's what's really causing you to burn out, is that massive gulf. So I thought, like, well, how can I replicate? How can I replicate what he's done here? Because, if it wasn't cars, if it was something very useful, like if it had been, stock trading that he cared that much about, he'd be like the most successful person I know. Like it's almost like a superpower he has. And so I really sat and I thought about it, and I'm like, well, he is in a bubble of that content. Like everywhere he goes, it's like inescapable. He's like obsessed. And so when I started learning Spanish, I carried on a similar philosophy. I started a new YouTube channel. So I got a whole new algorithm and everything, and I looked up some language learning videos, and I just started making it so that I could only watch language learning videos. Like that's what my algorithm was. Like it was an inescapable thing where I was just slowly, like, through shorts and through different videos, like whenever I felt like, even like high dopamine, like mostly entertaining ones, like through enough time and enough just like, entertainment, like just being immersed in that content, I started to like learn all these things. I started to learn about how language learning works, like Duolingo sucks, like all these things. And suddenly I had a much better strategy. And then when I decided to start to put into practice these, these philosophies and ideas I had been immersed in about how to learn this language, I went about finding the best way for me to continuously learn Spanish. So I set up my Netflix account to be in Spanish, and I started just watching TV in Spanish. And it was hard at first because, everything is hard at first. Like Miyamoto Musashi, Book of the Fire Rings, pretty good book. But anyway, everything is difficult at first. Like it was very like, I'd say it's somewhat enjoyable because I was watching TV, but it was also, it kind of sucked because like that feeling of not being able to understand even like a show you've seen before, like all the vocabulary was foreign to me and different things like that. But I realized that watching TV, getting that just like immersion, it wasn't the most effective way to learn the language, but it was the best way for me to continuously do it without burning out. It was the best consistent habit that I could incorporate into my lifestyle. Like if you want to be consistent, you almost have to like trust the process, give it as much time as it requires, and just slowly like chip away at that thing until you've reached it. Like I didn't go into learning Spanish with some grand aspiration of being fluent in 6 months. I was just like, well, I'm in it for the long game. Like however long this takes, however much, content I have to consume in this language to get there, I'm willing to do. Because it's like, if I was concerned with time limits, if I was concerned with like rushing to the end, I'd be putting in way more effort trying to like learn the grammar through brute force, like reading textbooks and things that would naturally cause me to burn out. Like I think that in a way, burnout happens when you are not being attentive to which way the wind is blowing. It's like you have to see your own motivation as a ship, and you are the captain of that ship. Sometimes the wind is in your sail, like I was talking before. Sometimes you'll feel so motivated you could sit and work on something for 6 hours, but sometimes the wind isn't in your sail. And sometimes you need to take a break so that you don't completely burn out. But it's like the best way to make sure the wind is in your sails is by lowering that cost to action, lowering that resistance in whatever way you can. Find the most entertaining form, the most consistent, like enjoyable form of productivity you can for some specific skill. It's like if you can't handle, learning Spanish for 8 hours a day through a textbook, maybe you can handle, watching Netflix in Spanish for 3 hours a day. Maybe that'll work for you instead. And it's like, it's something small, but it really makes a difference, especially as you just slowly incorporate that into your lifestyle and build habits on top of it once you've adapted. Like if, I struggled going to the gym at one point, and then I started going to the climbing gym, which was sort of different. I showed up just to climb, like bouldering and things, but there was also a gym there. There was also gym equipment. So because I naturally found it easier to go to the gym with the idea to climb, and I told myself like, yeah, you don't have to hit the gym there. You can climb. I ended up inevitably hitting the gym most of the time I was there, because once you're already out there, once you're already like a step out the door, it's like that resistance is much lower. Like if you want to practice guitar for 15 minutes, for like an hour a day, let's say, tell yourself just practice guitar for like 5 minutes. Just whip the guitar out, put on a video, and play with it. And that's all you tell yourself you have to do. And I promise, inevitably, you'll end up putting in more effort than you like promised yourself you would. And wow, this house is looking awesome. This is what I was talking about. Like, trust the process. Like, I didn't have some crazy idea of what this house was supposed to look like. I'm not a great Minecraft builder, but I just slowly chipped away at it. And doesn't look that great. I still need to add windows and do different things with it, but like, yeah, I mean, I just think it's awesome that I've been able to make this across this length of time because I just trust the process and just kept working on it. Like, that's an important part of everything too, is you just need to keep working on it. It doesn't matter what it looks like right now. It doesn't matter how much progress you've made up to this point right now. It's just about loving the process, continuing the process, and in the long term, like year after year, like, it will add up. It will always add up. I promise.